requested him to spare some of his precious time today. So I welcome Professor Sadiq to make his presentation. Over to you, Professor Sadiq.
Good morning, or good afternoon here. Thank you, Professor Khan, and also I would like to thank the Academy for inviting me. I know they're conscious about the time. I'm going to share my slides now. Just bear with me for 1 second. Can you see my slide there? Can you see my slide?
Yes, I think.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
so, I'm going to, within the brief time I have, I'm going to talk about the diversified food system to enhance food and nutritional security. We just heard from the Academy that the food and nutritional security is so important for the major part of the globe, particularly in the region. Outline, I'll just talk about global hunger and malnutrition and the prevalence of healthy diets, challenges facing the security, diversification, some examples, and draw some conclusions. Just before doing that, because it's a higher education forum coming later on, I'm coming from Western Australia, the second largest state in the world. The first one is somewhere in the United States. We have a small population, 2.6 million, and our university is very famous. We have been collaborating with a number of universities in Pakistan, particularly UAF, for the last 10 to 20 years. And Perth is a beautiful city. Those who haven't been, please do come. This is my university. As Dr. Khan has mentioned, we don't have agricultural universities. We have comprehensive universities in Australia. So everything gets integrated between disciplines. So Perth is the capital city of Western Australia. Very well internationally recognized university, top 100 and well-established industry partnership. What I mean, whether it is the medical science, ag science or engineering, we translate that to the industry or the community. With the Group 8 universities, there are 40 universities in Australia. The Group 8 leads the best research, intensive research and teaching. We got Nobel Prize in 2005, Professor Barry Marshall. I'm trying to have a seminar between him and the Academy with the help of Professor Khan. Inshallah, that will materialize. So he got his Nobel Prize in 2005 for medicine, the stomach ulcer, Helicobacter. Very close friend of mine. We have traveled together in many parts of the world. We do believe in ranking. Such a small university, we now currently rank 85 in the world in the academic ranking of world universities. In agriculture science, we are number 1 in Australia and number 16 in the world. Just the ranking came out. And of course, this is based on metrics, not on survey. So this is so important for us and for the country. Now coming to my talk, I think I advise everyone to read the report, the UNICEF report 2020, the food security and nutrition in the world. Wonderful papers there. But in essence, we have 690 million people in the world. Probably it is a bit more now. With the COVID, let's say 800 million still hungry and affected by hunger on the rise slowly. It continues at a rate and it will exceed 840 million by 2030. So are we going to achieve the sustainable development goal? I'm not sure. The COVID pandemic, which we heard, has added to the crisis, 130 million to undernourished people in the world. So that's also going to put a dent to the SDG. So the Asia-Pacific region, it is quite a lot, about 381 million, and continue to face high prevalence of malnutrition, 93 million stunted children under 5 years old. And that's about 30% of the population. And of course, Sub-Saharan Africa, I'll show you a map on that. So if you look at the percentage of wasting and stunting in children under 5 years, you can see that I don't have the data for Pakistan, but the Pakistan situation is also not that good. Look at, for example, India, about 38% of under 5 are stunting. So enormous. I mean, look at Thailand, for example. The diversity of the food basket is fantastic in Thailand. As a result, they have very low 11%. That is achieved because of the late king who realized the importance of diversity of food in the landscape, diversity of crops in the landscape, and hence the Thai is an excellent example. So if you look at globally, about 22% of the children under 5 are stunted, and 7 sub-regions out of the 17 have high or very high stunting prevalence in 2019. And you can see that includes Pakistan, India, and quite a lot of sub-Saharan Africa. So, prevalence of unhealthy diet is a very important component. The problem is we have been solely relying on wheat, rice, and maize, to some extent on potato. So, in the developing country, particularly, a lot of relevance on those 3 crops and less on other diets which I have shown here at the bottom. So the unhealthy current food consumption, on the left-hand side, we have got the processed meat, the red meat, the trans fatty acids, sugars, salt, sodium, and high-starch diet, particularly in the developing countries. So that's lead to malnutrition, risk of chronic diseases, non-communicable diseases, stunted children, and obesity, and also pregnant and lactating mothers. So on the low consumption protective food side, we've got fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and seafood, omega fatty acid, and so on. So some of them commonly now are called as neglected and underutilized crop. In fact, they should be called as future smart food crops. So just an example, for example, the amount of rice consumed in the region from Bangladesh to China, China still consumes a lot of rice. So the per capita consumption of rice in the region is far too much. So what are the challenges? So we have heard about the environmental degradation, unsustainable natural resources, particularly water, land, and biodiversity, more food with less resources, climate change, we heard again mentioning this morning, economic and social development, and high birth rate in some of the countries in the region. And of course, on the top of that, we have political unrest, wars, civil conflict, which exacerbate the challenges and contribute to increased poverty, hunger, and malnutrition. So it's a multi-dimensional problem. Bridging the production gap. We have to bridge the gap because by 2050, let's say 9.5 to 10 million people, we need more food. Of course, there is a lot of food waste. We need to address that. Limited yield potential of traditional crops like is very problem. Annual increase in global yields of rice, maize, and wheat are almost stagnant or slightly below 1% per annum. On the other side, the nutritional gap is increasing. And that's why we're seeing obesity on one side and malnutrition, stunting and wasting because lack of nutrient-rich, nutrient-dense food. So we need to diversify the food system, which is essentially diversify the farming system. So what are the potentials there? So the definition is that a food system consists of elements that includes all those environment, people, input, process, infrastructure, institution, and activities that relate to the production, processing, distribution, marketing, preparation, and consumption of food. And the outcome is more important for us. Activities, and namely nutrition and health status, socio-economic growth, equity, and environmental sustainability. That is the definition. So what we need in the related interdependence of component of the food production system, production, so we need to have the policy on one side and regional cooperation, institution, and human capacity development. Of course, there are other inputs like post-harvest handling, distribution, marketing, and consumption. So what I want to say is that there is no point in going and pondering on one aspect. You need to then take a holistic approach. And I want to emphasize the government of the day, whichever country, they have a significant role to play. I just heard from Professor Khan, privatization of the plant breeding centers or agricultural research station. One need to be very, very careful. And it can be done in some advanced countries where it is not a major issue, but we need to be very careful there. What are the futures of current agriculture and food system? So agriculture production relies on few staple crops I mentioned, and making farming more vulnerable, environmental shock, and also the market fluctuations. Limited diversity in the food system I mentioned, so therefore it is absolutely essential to diversify the food system for a balanced diet and enhance adaptation to climate change. So, you have fruits, vegetables, pulses, it depends upon the country, nuts and seeds, whole grains, polyunsaturated fatty acids, seafood, wherever you go. So both commonly known as traditional underutilized crops. Some examples, one of our recent papers in Nature Plants, looking at the foxtail millet, drumstick, morique, elephant foot yam, taro, which is really tolerant to transient waterlogging. What is this nutritional value? They're rich in macro and micronutrients including iron, zinc, selenium and calcium, many vitamins like carotenoids, vitamin B complex and so on. Considering their nutritional importance, the UN General Assembly declared 2021 as the International Year of the Fruits and Vegetables. Pakistan is blessed with a lot of fruits and vegetables. We heard from the chairman, the mango in Pakistan. Social importance of traditional and neglected underutilized crop or future smart crops. And good number of these crops are already existing, well adapted to the marginal soil, harsh environment and resilient to climate change. They play an important role in cultural traditions and heritage in the subsistence agriculture. Despite their great nutrition and adaptation, they were replaced by the modern agriculture such as rice, wheat and maize. So the multi-dimensional benefits are food and nutritional security of these crops, resilience to climate change, adaptation to harsh environments, low input agriculture. By doing this, we are going to conserve the biodiversity and culture diversity in a landscape, and it also will improve the livelihoods and rural development. I'll show you some examples. Essentially, it should lead to economic and social development. And the global interest in this crop started way back, Convention on Biological Diversity, Brazil, 1992, then of course FAO, International Technical Conference on Plant Genetic Resources in Germany, 1996. And you got various examples. And you may just take example as quinoa, which is traditionally grown by the Andean mountains 3,000 to 4,000 years ago. Now it's a wonderful food all over the world, including in your country, and it has got so much of nutrition, vitamin B complex, A, and so on. So the Peruvian community now export, they also consume, and it becomes a major product in international supermarkets, including in your country. So the FAO declared International Year 2013, and as a result there has been significant promotion, and as a result it is now seen as a major crop in various farming systems. Pulses, I don't need to talk about it. Again, the chairman told about the importation of lentils and chickpeas into Pakistan. And we all know that it is the poor man's meat, but it is no more because of the scarcity and high protein, amino acids, which complements with the cereals, particularly lysine, rich in iron, zinc, calcium, and good quality carbohydrates, means not easily digestible carbohydrate, which is good for your iron gut and high in dietary fiber. And in addition to that, the legume can fix up to 70 to 200 kilogram nitrogen per hectare, and that's equivalent to 20 to 22 million tons of nitrogen per year in the globe. High water use efficiency, carbon-nitrogen ratio, and so on. So it can lead to a negative carbon footprint. In fact, I just got a paper soon coming in PNAS, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science, about both this aspect. Take, for example, lentil in 1961-63, which was a very minor crop globally, 3%. Now you look at 2009 to 11, it is 15%. So from a minor crop, lentil has increased, chickpea has also increased to 36%, and fava bean, in fact, declined, but that's a reaction to markets and the need. In the National Year of Pulses 2016, I was lucky or fortunate to be designated as the ambassador for that program, and as a result, we have promoted that vigorously in various parts of the world, including in Pakistan. And we summarized that in a very interesting paper in Nature Plants. And the main main point I want to say is that don't neglect legumes, and that can compromise human health and sustainable food production. One point I want to point out here, R&D and E effort, extension effort in pulses are much low compared with the three major cereal crops. For example, at that time when we calculated 175 million per annum is only spent on 13 pulse crops, whereas in the case of rice, wheat and maize, it could be billions and billions of dollars. My conclusion, Chair, because I know I'm conscious about the time, rediscovering Asia's forgotten crops to fight chronic and hidden hunger, we just published that in Nature Plans. Anyone who wants, please do contact, I'll give you that. Basically, the food system production, processing, labeling and packaging, distribution and marketing, consumption. And then that will lead to healthy diets, diversified nutrition, labeling regulations, advertising, food-based dietary guidelines, healthy diets, win-win for the community and win-win situation for the farmers. There are examples. For example, I mentioned about how Thai people are doing very well, parts of Nepal are doing very well, the Akshay Patra, the school children's midday meal and breakfast program. So we need to get some of these smart foods into the school breakfast program, in the soldier army program and so on, so that there will be a market, and that's where the government has to play a role. Then the farmers will start growing crop. You should not compare the yield of rice versus, for example, amaranth or one of the vegetables, because you should really look at the nutritional value and how that's going to help to achieve that so-called nutritional security. I won't go into the details. Again, we can start from genetic diversity, selection and cultivation, harvest, value addition, marketing and final use. Finally, we want to have an impact on improved nutrition, income and other livelihood benefits. And again, quite a lot of this summarized in an FAO publication, which I was lucky to be a co-editor with Dr. Xuan Li. We also done similar things in the mountain region. Again, we can bring some of these crops into the mountain region. There is a publication on how can we harness modern agriculture for zero hunger in Asia. So, last slide, the conclusion recommendation. So the current food system must be transformed by diversifying and incorporating more commonly used fruits, vegetables, and traditional underutilized crops, which I call future smart food crops. Healthy diet will certainly provide more protein, macro and micronutrients, and cognitive development of the next generation of the young children. I'm particularly keen on that. And we need to target traditional and underutilized crops deserve special attention, but their adaptation to harsh environments and low input system makes them very easy to incorporate into the system. Policy has to change. It's not just about research alone, so we need to bring the policy. Incorporating this into the national food security and nutritional strategy policies. Encourage investment in scientific research, both public and private, so that we can rapidly adopt this technology. More importantly, we need to increase the awareness of the producers and consumers, like what I showed with regard to quinoa. Then there will be demand, then the supply will go as well. And coordination capacity development, because there's not a lot of knowledge in the scientists, because they have been working on wheat, rice and maize. So in the universities like yours in Pakistan, you need to bring some of these units into the thing, and we need to develop next generation agronomists and breeders in this area. And this innovative platform will allow greater access to information, technology transfer to all stakeholders, and components of the food and value system. And this will lead to definitely a number of components, 1, 2, 6, 12, 15, 5, 13, and 17 of the SDG goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sadiq.